Hi, folks. Welcome once again to Mr. H's weekly recap, where we try to give you a rundown of what is going on in room 1925 here at the high school. This week, a couple reminders just to parents, given the snow day and some of the delays that we had earlier. Tonight is Parents' Night, Thursday night that is, and we will be having Parents' Night from 6:30 to 8, so please come by, say hello if you're able. Also, a reminder that, as you've probably seen posted on the district website, President's Day is now being an off day again, and so students do not have to come to class. That is a day that's being forgiven by the state, and so enjoy the 4-day weekend, I guess, is the best thing I've been telling a lot of the students to do. And we'll see them back on that Tuesday, the 21st. Now, remember also with that day, we have a 2-hour delay schedule that day due to faculty meetings in the morning going on. So students get a little bit of sleep in time before they have to come to class. Another item which is also going to be coming to your students as they come home for the long weekend is March 9th and 10th. We have conferences here at the high school, parent-teacher conferences. I have a letter that I'm sending home before students leave for the long weekend, basically detailing kind of how I run conferences, how parents can sign up. What I would ask parents to do is take a look at that letter, fill out the bottom section, have their student return it, just so I can kind of gauge interest in, what parents are maybe interested in coming in, what parents aren't, and also I can start getting my records in order as far as what those days are going to look like. So please feel free if you have questions to email, call, and we'll try to get any issue that might be out there addressed and taken care of. Let's start talking about some of our classes. Let's start with the Gov and Econ guys. This week we've been primarily focused on finishing up fiscal policy, wrapping up debt, and starting to talk a little bit about the U.S. tax code, tax systems, certain types of taxes students will be exposed to as they do either their federal or state taxes. We took the students through kind of a little bit of a tax workshop where we gave them a mock W-2. We took them through kind of the 1040 EZ form and kind of showed them how those pieces work together and kind of why certain monies are going in certain directions. And for some students, especially the ones who had never done their taxes this way before, it was kind of an enlightening experience to see kind of the form itself, what goes into it, and really to kind of dispel the rumor that it's a pretty scary form. It's really not a hard form. It's just you have to read carefully and make sure you double check your basic arithmetic. So that was a very enlightening stuff, enlightening activity for a lot of the students. The end of the week this week, we've been focusing kind of on supply and demand, which I like to say is the bridge between our macro and micro units of this particular unit we're in right now. Discussing the basic concepts of what denotes a supply and demand curve, why they move, how they move, getting students comfortable with these concepts so that they can do kind of problems and scenarios on their own. And then when we come back next week, perhaps getting into a little bit more of the statistical side of it, actually plotting out the graphs and maybe doing a little bit more in that sense with price floors and price ceilings, and just kind of setting that in their minds before we start getting into labor negotiations, collective bargaining, talking a little bit about personal finance, credit cards, loans, and kind of wrapping up the unit that way. Looking at March 1st as a potential day for an econ exam. So your students will probably in the coming class periods be getting a study guide and some more information on what that exam is going to look like. So stay tuned. For our world history students, we've been wrapping up the Renaissance. We've been spending a lot of time talking about kind of the latter part of the Middle Ages, particularly focusing on the institution of the Catholic Church, kind of a little bit of the history that helped to develop the church, and why this was such a powerful institution during this period in European history. We did a little debate this week, kind of a group we don't get to spend a lot of class time on, talking about the Mongols, and historians tend to paint them as a pretty barbaric group. But does the history and the evidence really bear that out? We had kind of an interesting discussion there on Wednesday. And then the rest of this week is going to be really kind of, a brief overview of the Inquisition, and then talking a little bit about the Reformation. And this is kind of getting students ready for next Friday, where we actually have a guest speaker coming in who's going to be talking more about this period, particularly a period right after the Reformation known as the Counter-Reformation. And that's a professor over at E-Town College, Dr. Graybill, who specializes in this period in history, but also kind of brings a little bit of a local flair to it, kind of focusing his research on the Amish, the Mennonites, these groups that began as kind of splinter groups from the Counter-Reformation, but also have kind of a very good and very storied local tradition here in Lancaster County as well. So bringing some of these big world topics to a more micro level, a more kind of local level, which As someone who's kind of a little bit of a state history nerd, is always interesting to me. So we look forward to that next week. Students will also be getting conference letters in this class as well, detailing kind of what I mentioned at the top of this video. And then we'll also be setting students up for their first DBQ essay, their first attempt at actually putting some historical writing out there. And we'll probably be going over that a little bit on Thursday, but also going a little bit more into depth once we get through kind of the historical background to the essay, which will be Tuesday when we come back, and then setting a date and letting students kind of tackle the question, tackle the documents we're going to give them. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to email, please feel free to reach out, and we will try to get those topics addressed as soon as we can. Thank you guys, and have a great President's Day weekend.